Thank you so much to everyone for bearing with us for a moment. Fiona Patton will join us shortly. We're having some technical difficulties, so she is been kind enough to bear with us, and we'll be back with her in 20 minutes. But this also gives us the chance to jump to our next session, which is when it comes to your health and how employers should be supporting women in their workplaces, there's a lot that can be done, and there's also a lot that women should know about their rights at work. So what are progressive companies doing to improve the health of their employees, and how can women make sure their employer is upholding their rights at work? In this session, I'm joined by Fay Calderone, who is a workplace relations and employment lawyer and a diversity and inclusion leader. She is also an all-round legend and the co-chair of Hall & Wilcox Diversity and Inclusion Council. And Fay, we work with you a lot throughout the year, and I'm just so keen to kind of hear your thoughts on this and for you to share some expertise with everyone that's joining in today, because I think such a huge part of what we all need to learn here is how we better have those conversations with our employers. And what we actually need to know about what our rights at work are. So, Fay, just broadly, I want to talk about the discrimination and reasonable adjustments in the workplace based on health and carers' responsibilities that you've been working on. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, look, I mean, employers at the moment are acutely aware of the invisible battle, what used to be invisible battles that employees have been facing. So I think that we will start from that proposition that I think we're starting to have more vulnerable conversation. There's people's vulnerabilities have come through in the pandemic, both physical and psychological. A lot of the physical have become evident because people, when you got your vaccine dose, in terms of what category you were, people that needed to take greater precautions, people that are currently still, wearing masks in places where others aren't, like those things have become more obvious. And so they're having more honest conversations with their employers, but also from a psychological point of view, I mean, employers are having more of those conversations with employees because they are acutely aware of, as Sam Mostyn put it, at National Press Club this week, the great exhaustion, and they are very concerned about the great resignation. So starting from that premise, I think we're in a better position at the moment, and we're seeing less claims and less disputes around discrimination and reasonable adjustments than we used to. So I think that's an important sort of line to start from. But there are employers that are not, that are really keen to get everybody back to the office. They don't, they want to do the bare minimum. And the bare minimum is available in discrimination legislation, state and federal, for people that have carers' responsibilities, for people that have physical or psychological illnesses or things that they are struggling with. And they can make a request for variation to their working hours or to work from home or any other adjustments that they require to be made to their workload or to their specific duties. And employers have an obligation to make reasonable adjustments. And then there's this question around, secondary question in terms of whether or not that would place an unjustifiable hardship on the employer. And what an unjustifiable hardship is for a large employer is obviously vastly different to what it would be for the local fish and chip shop that's only got 2 employees. So it's a careful balancing act, but employees need to really be aware of their rights, and it's best to get proactive advice if you're getting pushback rather than knee-jerk, and definitely not to leave. Not until you're sure it's not the place for you to be anyway.
Yeah. How can we open dialogue with employers about new supportive or inclusive policies, and I guess what their kind of responsibility is for workforces? Yeah.
Look, it's not nice to have, it's necessary at the moment. Like we talk about beyond compliance, yes, the laws are there and they provide minimum entitlements for carers leave, family and domestic violence leave. A lot of that, for example, is unpaid. For a lot of workplaces, and employers need to go above and beyond those minimum thresholds or those minimum requirements that are out under laws or awards, because it is the cornerstone. Supporting employees and their health and their well-being is the cornerstone of healthy and inclusive workplaces. And we know that inclusive workplaces result in more satisfied employees, more loyal employees, more productive employees, more satisfied customers, which, lo and behold, also provides a better return to the organisation in terms of productivity and returns to shareholders. So it does come back. I mean, we talk a lot about D19 inclusion in particular. This is part of inclusion. I don't think well-being is separate to or something that it should be under the work health and safety umbrella, and then D&I is looked at separately. It needs to be together, and there is intersectionality in all of this. And we you have to take people as you find them. I think we know that now. They're coming to work. They're vulnerable. They have strengths. They have limitations. They have challenges, and we need to be able to get the best out of them. And the only way you can do that is by creating compassionate and supportive environments that enable them to thrive.
Yeah. What are some of the most common complaints or anxieties or stresses that you hear from women around their rights at work and articulating that and having those conversations with their employers?
I still think that the things that are permeating at the moment are sexual harassment. It's just not going away. We've got so much of a national conversation occurring, and I am having conversations with employers frequently to reinforce the safety consequences of not addressing this. But it just seems to be so systemic and just permeates, unfortunately. And it also, and it's not just sexual harassment, it's bullying as well, it's burnout, it's that sort of, there seems to be this snowball effect at the moment. People are exhausted, they're working hard, they've been pedaling hard for a long time, they've been isolated for a long time, they've been frustrated for a long time with families or other responsibilities, financial concerns, and that's not to excuse conduct, but we've got to understand the human condition and what drives conduct to address it. That then seems to, and it's not always the same, but then seems to drive this intensity and pressure and this lack of respect, I think, respectful communications, and that's where we're seeing a lot of the bullying complaints. I also think that we're seeing a lot of substance abuse, which is affecting people's inhibitions. The boundaries are blurring. There's no distinction between the office and home. So if they're cracking open a beer or whatever it is at 5, 6 o'clock, by 9 o'clock, when they're interacting with a particular employee, the dark side of their humanity comes through, and they're the sorts of sexual harassment claims we're seeing. Also, now, all of a sudden, the last month, I've even seen a couple of sexual assaults, sadly, devastatingly, actually. I hate dealing with them. I hate the fact that they happen. But again, people have been in this, sort of cocoon for so long. They've gone out, and I think that they've just gone rogue, extremely rogue. But I mean, when we're talking about the most extreme conduct, like I said, no, it's inexcusable, and I don't think you can say that it's just because of certain things, but there are certainly patterns there that are occurring, and there is that overlap between these conduct issues and the mental health issues.
What are some of the resources that we can explore to make sure we're not being exploited at work?
Yeah, we're pretty spoilt, I've got to say, in Australia. We do have some terrific resources. Of course, Australian Human Rights Commission has got all the all the material, reports, surveys. Of course, we all know about Kate Jenkins' report that was published there, but a lot of really practical guides for employers and employees about sort of dealing with rights at work. Safe Work Australia which is not a regulator, they're the umbrella body. They have produced guidelines in relation to psychologically safe workplaces and also addressing sexual harassment at work as a safety issue. Again, it's great guidelines that we didn't have before. There's also issues around bullying in the psychological safety one. I'm happy to share those links with the audience. And then in terms of your basic entitlements, Fair Work Ombudsman's website, great place to go, great resources for employers and employees, fact sheets on entitlements, everything from flexible work to paid parental leave, things like miscarriages and stillbirth. You don't need legal advice on that really, unless you've got a dispute. It's all there. It's all there in black and white and quite simplistic. And then if there is a dispute, of course, the Fair Work Commission website's got provisions around applications to stop the bullying, applications to stop sexual harassment orders, the Fair Work Commission unfair dismissal and general protections jurisdiction. So we have a huge compliance framework that is there, and it's they're protective jurisdictions, and a lot of them are protective in that you don't need to leave to address these issues. There are protections in our legislation. Applications to stop the bullying and sexual harassment can't be made if you're no longer in employment. That's intended to be a jurisdiction that enables you to safely continue in a role. But the general protections provisions are there and can prevent an employer. You can seek injunctions, for example, from an employer taking certain action. You don't usually get to an injunction. All you need to do is to write a nice note about the potential that's where it might be headed. It takes a pretty audacious employee, however, to take things to that level and stay in the workplace if there is someone that is particularly problematic that's making their life difficult.
I want to talk to you quickly about domestic violence leave, which has come up quite a lot in recent times, and I think probably a lot of people are confused about what their entitlements are around this. Could you shed a little bit more light on that?
Yeah, so the provisions are to 5 days. So National Employment Standard that applies to all employees is the framework, but then there's also provisions in awards. So you need to check if you're covered by an award or an enterprise agreement. There might be more specific or more generous provisions in there, as well as employer policies. We'll get to that in a minute. But employees, including casual employees and part-time employees, so it's broadly defined. It's not like others where there's limitations. They're entitled to 5 days of unpaid domestic violence leave each 12-month period. They're the provisions, the statutory minimum that was introduced. Organisations like ours and many others, as you know, have got far more generous policies than that. They also provide for paid leave, but some also provide for financial support, various other, trauma-informed counselling services, emergency response plans, all those things that we can do and need to do to address this issue in the workplace. And it is like, this is one of the things that I'm saying, there's intersectionality. How do you not consider, yes, it's not happening in the workplace, but how do you not consider that as something that will affect your employees' health and well-being in the workplace, which will then in turn affect their performance, their ability to thrive, their delivery, their demeanour. There's so much in it. And if we start from the position that we have to take people as we find them, and people are fighting all sorts of invisible battles at any given time in their life, and we need to support them through those battles, because when you do, the people that feel nurtured and supported in their darkest moments are the people that will stay and deliver more than you will ever expect, more than you would ever anticipate. Now, that's not why you do it. I've got a bit of a social justice heart. I think you do it because it's the right thing to do. But if you need to be having conversations with business leaders and with shareholders about why you do it, there's a very clear financial imperative.
Fay, we could keep this conversation going for so long, and I really do implore you to share those resources that you were talking about in the comments section, because I think a lot of people will find that hugely useful. But I want to talk about just one last point and get you to comment on some of the things that could be changed or greater reform around women's rights at work that you feel are still yet to be looked at or implemented.
Yeah, look, I've done some very broad and persistent commentary on the Respect at Work report and those changes. I absolutely agree, and I've always said that that sexual harassment is a work health and safety issue. I don't disagree with that premise, but I think from the perspective of providing a very clear, direct and precise framework and sending a clear message to the workforce leaders, everyone in it, that it is unacceptable. I think a positive duty is a first and very important step. I think it's great that some of the changes have been introduced. I think this applications for stop sexual harassment orders are a good reform. I don't see why they weren't there in the first place. If you can stop bullying, why wouldn't you stop sexual harassment in the same way? But like I said, in my career, I've got one at the moment, but they're for bullying, but they are very rare because it takes a very audacious employee to go, you know what, my workplace hasn't resolved this issue properly. So I'm going to trot on over to the Commission and get them to scrutinise our interactions and make orders, breach of which may result in several civil penalties, about what my employer can and can't do, or what my sort of leader, whoever they're working with, person, colleague, when they can email me, whether they can be in a room with me, whether they can work certain hours, like very prescriptive orders. And I don't know, I just feel like you have to have some chutzpah. I don't personally think I could do it. I would leave. And that's what we don't want, right? We don't want people to leave. So I think we need to shift the conversation to the start rather than to the end. And the only way we can do that is with a positive duty. Yes, there are work health and safety laws, but they are state laws. They're all over the place. There's, so many different jurisdictions to navigate. The guidelines, which are terrific, don't have legal force. So and frankly, I mean, what is it? The same prosecutor or the same regulator or person at the regulator who is going to be looking at the construction industry fatality or the mining industry cases, are they going to offer trauma-informed responses to sexual harassment in the workplace? Are they going to prioritise prosecution of sexual harassment cases? I just don't think I just think we can do more. We really need to do more. And the employers that are progressive and that get it and that have the buy-in and have seen reap the benefits, and a lot that have female leaders, frankly, are well ahead of where the laws are. But for the rest, the law needs to catch up.
And at the very minimum, we need all of those 57 recommendations in the Respect at Work report implemented by our government. So, Fay, thank you so much for joining us today. And for everyone listening, Fay will share those resources and links via the comments section. And if you do have any other questions for Fay, please do come to us with questions, and we'll get in touch with Fay and build out a broader piece on that as well. But thank you so much.